Welcome to the first in a two-part video here, and I'm going to show you some simple examples of exceptions. Now the examples that I'm going to show you are very simple, but I want you to get your head wrapped around what's going on with exceptions and just kind of plant a couple of seeds about how you can use these things and what you can do. Now the landscape's wide open here, and I would strongly urge you to go out there at whatever technical level you're comfortable with and dig into exceptions a little more and wade out a little deeper into these things. Okay, keep in mind I'm just giving you the basics here. All right, there's a lot more that you can do here. There's a lot more places to go, and for right now I just want to get you started. So the first thing we're going to do is a very simple example. I'm going to show you just how to throw an integer. So the first thing we're going to do is create our integer, and we're going to create a variable, an integer called inventory, and we're going to just initialize it to 4. And then we're just going to do an example here of throwing an integer. And so the first thing we're going to do with our exceptions, remember, we're going to use a try catch. And so I'm going to say try, and then within these braces I'm going to put my code that I want to try. I want to check to see if there's going to be any exceptions. Well, there could be a lot of code here, but basically we're going to end up with an if statement that says if inventory is less than 16, then we need to do something. All right, and what we're going to do here is we're going to throw inventory. So we're just going to throw this integer out there. We're going to say there's a problem with this. We're going to throw it at you, and when you get this integer, it means there's a problem with it. You need to do something with it. Okay, then we're just going to put catch at the end of that block, and we're going to tell it when you catch integer e. So we're going to throw an integer at you, catch it, assign it into e, and then do something with it. All right, and then I'm going to open some more braces, and this is where I'm going to put my handler, if you will. Okay, and I'm just going to do a little quick write out to the console, and there are only, now notice what we're going to do here. We're going to just call our inventory. Now obviously I could write some code to reorder or to email people or whatever I want to do, but for now, to keep it simple here, this is what we'll close it out with. And notice all I've done is said is if the inventory is less than 16, then just go ahead and throw that inventory integer, catch it here, and when you catch it, load it out into here. Okay, actually I should put e there, and send it out. So let's take a look at this and see how it actually performs. And you'll kind of get the hang of it right here with this one, but this is a very easy deal to pull off. The complication comes when you start to use the exception classes. Okay, so I'm going to right click, doing everything here like I have on all the other examples, and so let's do exception example and run it, and notice it's telling me there are only 4 items in inventory. I need to leave myself a space right here to reorder. And so what's going on here is that if I come out here and notice put a space here and rebuild this thing, that as soon as I see this condition, then I throw that integer variable out there, and suddenly it works. Okay, now we could have just as easily thrown an error string. Okay, let me just back up to here and let's change this, and I can just put a string in here. Okay, and I can say inventory is low, reorder, and this just gives me a little warning to throw out to somebody. But again, in the real world, I'd probably want to write some code here to tell people that we need to do a reorder, right? Now, when I catch it right here, notice I'm not catching an integer anymore. I'm actually catching a string value right here. So what I'm going to say right here is to catch a constant character e. Again, we'll just use e since we used it the first time. It'll work here. All right. And this time I'm going to take all of this stuff out. All right, and notice that's what we have. All right, so let's run this one. We'll compile this, and then once again we'll just jump out to the command console, run our example again, and notice it throws inventory is low, reorder. So you want to kind of start to get used to putting the code that you want to have handled if anything comes up right here inside these braces, inside the try section. Okay, any errors that arise here, we can simply throw a condition to our catch area, and then we can pass all kinds of information in, and then we can take whatever actions we want to. The actions we're taking here is just to write something out to the console. Okay, now keep in mind, you could have quite a few lines of code in the try section, and then you could have quite a few lines of code in the catch section. All right, now I can have multiple catches here, and I can just list the catches down through there, and then I can check for from the most specific down to the most general errors or exceptions and catch those. Okay, that's one of the things I would encourage you to go out there and look at. Okay, but that's a couple of very simple examples for exceptions, and in part 2 we're going to actually use the provided exception class that's part of the C++ standard. So join me there. Welcome to part 2 of exception examples. Now in this one we want to actually use the exception class that's built into the C++ standard library, and to do that you'll notice that I'm going to basically clear the screen. Now I'm using the exception example project that I used in part 1, and I've just erased everything but this right here. I've just deleted everything but my basic integer main. Alright, so you won't see this one pre-built out there in your work files. You'll just need to build it as you go along with me. Alright, now notice a couple of things up here. I've added the include statement for exception and the using namespace standard, because this exception class that we're going to use to catch our exception is part of the C++ standard library. Okay, now the first thing we need to do obviously is create our try statement, our try section if you will, and in that I'm going to do something kind of weird. I'm going to try to create a bunch of integers. Alright, and I'm going to use the new keyword to try to allocate the memory, and then what I'm going to do is bring in, and I'm actually going to copy these so that I get it right, somewhere around 4 billion integers. Alright, and then I'm going to jump down here and I'm going to put my catch statement. Now notice I didn't put a throw, right? And why didn't I put a throw? Well, because I don't know if this error is going to happen or not. So as you can see, you don't always have to throw. You can throw and then catch it, or you can just use things like the standard exception class or any other classes that you've built or that are already out there to look for specific errors that are thrown. All right, now notice that I'm saying, okay, something's going to happen here. If it does, all right, we just want to write out standard exception. I'm just going to put this literally out there, and then I am going to call, notice this particular object here, I'm basically instantiating an object E off of the exception class there. When I call E, you'll notice that there's a lot of things out there. Tidy, and this is the destructor for it, but what is what I'm interested in here, and I will call what, and that is going to give me some textual information about the exception class. Okay, and so notice I've closed out my catch block here, and so we will now run this and let's see what happens. And so I will build it, and now I will jump out to my location. Let me clear all this from the previous example, and we will type exception example, and you'll notice the standard exception that was raised was bad allocation. In other words, my computer had a problem allocating this much memory for this, and so it threw an exception back at me. Now that's the way you can use the exception class. Notice I didn't throw, I just caught, and whatever it caught, it appeared here. Now while I've got the time in this video, I want to show you another very interesting thing that we can do with these things, and that is I'm going to go back and create my inventory integer again, and I'll set it equal to 4. All right. Now, the first thing I could have done before I created this integer array here, or this array of integers, I could have gone back to what we were doing before, and I could have said if inventory is less than 3, right, then throw inventory. All right, and then I could have come down here, and notice I'll do the more specific first, and I will come down here and I'll just simply do another catch. All right, and I will catch int a, then I'll put a block down here. Now notice it doesn't squawk at this. As soon as I get this, there are 2 catches here. It doesn't care. Okay, and we will do a cout, and we'll just say inventory low at, and then we will put the a that passed in. And as I struggle to type and talk at the same time, there we go. All right, now notice if it catches an error here, it will throw it and I'll get this one. If it doesn't catch the error here, it will continue on and I'll get that one. Well, we shouldn't get that error here. We should only get the allocation because my inventory is not less than 3. And so let's run this and see if that's what happened. Yes, it does. I got my bad allocation. But if I change this to 2, okay, and I run this, and this is something you'll have to watch with these. With C++, with any kind of programming, you're always chasing memory and logic, right? And so if I run it this time, notice the first thing it did is it threw the inventory as low at 2. So in essence, what I did is I caught this error, and basically I tested for this error and said if that condition exists, then go ahead, I've got a problem here. Throw the inventory, all right? And it gave it to me, and so I got this one. Now if this one's okay, then I know there's an error here. Okay, it's going to test for an error here because it's in the try, and the error that it's going to throw is not really an integer error, so it will skip this one, but this one will catch it. It's a more general one and it will catch it. Again, I hope I didn't confuse you with this example, but you can use multiple catch statements to look for different kinds of errors, and then you can work with these various exception classes, bad allocation classes, logic error classes, and all those things that I talked about in a previous video to catch a number of different conditions. The only thing you have to watch is you usually want to catch from specific to more general as you move down through your catch statements. All right. So anyway, that's just again another simple example of some cool things that you can do with exceptions and exception handling in C++, and I would strongly encourage you to go out there and dig around a little more, find you some other examples, and just as you're comfortable with it, go a little deeper and a little deeper into exception handling.